Over the past several months, I've added a few more cookbooks to my collection, and we are going to go through all of those today. Hey, it's Sarah, and I'm really excited to talk about these cookbooks with you today. I've accumulated a little stack, like I said, over the past few months, and I thought let's just hang out, like curl up under a cozy blanket and talk a little bit about these new cookbooks. Now, almost all of these were gifted to me from friends and family. A lot of them I got at Christmas time, but there are also a couple that I have kind of picked up myself here or there, and I thought this would be a great time to go through all of them with you. So let's just get into it. So the first one here is the Red Truck Bakery Cookbook by Brian Noyes. And this one is fun because I actually got to go to a cookbook event for this author for his latest cookbook. So this is the first cookbook, and you could get copies of the cookbooks at the event. I went with a friend, so she got the new one and then I got the first one, so we could both kind of have one of each, cook through them, potentially swap them back and forth, or maybe if we really love both of them, both end up getting the one that we're missing. But this is all baked goods. It's mostly sweet stuff, but there is some savory stuff in here as well. I think there's like some pot pies and things like that, but it just seems like a really great resource for a lot of delicious baking recipes. So I'm excited to cook from this one. Next up, this is Gullah Geechee Home Cooking Recipes from the Matriarch of Edisto Island by Emily Meggett. And this is one that I was really excited about because I have seen, interviews with the author and just information about the area that she's in and the cuisine there in different forms of media. And I was really excited to have her cookbook with her recipes all compiled together. If you're not familiar with the Gullah Geechee cuisine or even where she's based and all that kind of stuff, I think the back of the book just sums it up, so I'll just read it to you. It says, the Gullah Geechee are the descendants of enslaved people from West Africa who settled mainly on the Sea Islands and the coasts of South Carolina and Georgia. Relatively isolated from the rest of the country, they were able to preserve their culture and foodways. The food, with its focus on seasonality, rice, and seafood, is a living link to their ancestors and a precursor to classic low-country cuisine. And what I'm really excited about with this book is it's like part cookbook, part history, all compiled together. So the beginning parts here are just, like paragraph after paragraph, section after section of historical information before you even get into the recipe parts. So I think that's really nice to have all that information in one place together, and to be able to learn from cooking the recipes, of course, but also just from the, longer form content in the book. And the other thing I'm really excited about with this book is that for me, it feels like a combination of new and familiar because African American cuisine has had such an influence on American cuisine overall. There are a lot of things in here that feel very familiar to me because it's just a part of American cuisine. But then there are other things that are maybe more specific to the region, or just things that maybe I've had but never made myself before. So I think it's going to be a really nice mix of things that feel like comfort foods and things that I know, as well as an opportunity to try some new stuff as well. And a good reference book too, because it has all the history stuff in there. And there's a really great video that I will link from Eater about Gullah Geechee cooking, and it features Miss Emily. I think it's a really great starting place if this is something that's new to you and you want to learn more about it. I'll link that so you can go ahead and watch it and kind of get started. Next, we have The Walks of Life, Recipes to Know and Love from a Chinese American Family. And this is by Bill, Judy, Sarah, and Caitlin Leung, who are a family, the parents and their two daughters. And you might be familiar with the blog, The Walks of Life, where they post recipes. I was not, but I'm sure a lot of people who get this cookbook will get it because they've been cooking from the blog. That was not me. I found out about the cookbook and I was like, wow, where has this been? I need this. I'm really interested in trying these recipes. One, because it just looks like, I don't know, there's a lot of information that goes with each recipe. I like a recipe that has some context with it. To me, a good recipe is going to include information about like how you might serve it, things you can make ahead of time, substitutions you might make, maybe some history about the recipe, all that kind of stuff. And each recipe has a nice little header section with that kind of information. But the other thing about this book I think is going to be fun is that I kind of realized, you know, Chinese and Chinese American cuisine is really familiar for most Americans because it's so ubiquitous. Chinese restaurants are everywhere, and that's a lot about the history of Chinese Americans is the reason for that. But it's a cuisine that a lot of us are familiar with maybe getting at a restaurant. But if you don't have that background or heritage, you might not really be familiar with cooking it at home. At least that's the case for me. So it's gonna be like a lot of things I think that I've eaten a lot of, but that I've never made because I've always just gotten it at a restaurant. But also, again, some similar to the last cookbook, some new things for me too that I can try that maybe I've never been able to get before, and now I can make it at home. So it seems like a lot of great recipes just from flipping through it, like things that will be, you know, quicker go-to things I can make, as well as some things that might be a little bit, require a little bit more time. So I think this one is gonna be a lot of fun to get into. And I'll have the names and authors and links to all the books that I talk about in this video in the description, so you can just go there for quick, easy reference. Next, we have Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat by Samin Nosrat. And this is a book that I have known about for a long time, but haven't had it in my own personal collection. So I first became aware of this actually through the Netflix series by the same name. And it's really about how to make delicious food that tastes good, mastering the elements of good cooking. So it's a how-to book about cooking, but it also has recipes in it. And I've always been kind of on the fence about getting this for myself because I'm not a beginner cook by any means, and I didn't know how helpful it would be for me. But someone got it for me as a gift, and I was like, okay, this is great. I can actually go through this and look through it. And I think regardless of how much I personally benefit from the instructional information, I think it'll be a great reference. And the recipes, I mean, I'm sure they'll be delicious. And I think it will be good for me to just be more familiar with it as a professional, so I can better recommend it to people who might benefit from it. So it has a lot of, you know, instructional information about different essentials you want to have, how salt, fat, acid, and heat contribute to cooking and how to use them. And it has really nice illustrations throughout about different things you need to know about cooking, different types of ingredients, different types of flavor combinations. Just like this little thing. Right here, it's got a little chart on avocados, has some little illustrations about putting the recipe together and how different ingredients go together and how they contribute to the overall flavor. Like I said, a lot of recipes in here too. So it seems like, oh, look at this. Like, this is beautiful. These little like charts and stuff. I just think that's great and is a really nice way to present information visually. So I think this is a really beautiful book, and I'm excited to actually get into it and see what's going on here. Next up, we have Jubilee Recipes from 2 Centuries of African American Cooking by Toni Tipton-Martin. Look at that picture with the shrimp on the front. I just love that. And this is a book that highlights African American cuisine, as it says, through 2 centuries, and features a lot of different recipes from a lot of different people, a lot of different times, and kind of brings them together in this collection. It says on here, with more than 100 recipes, Jubilee presents techniques, ingredients, and dishes that show the roots of African American cooking, deeply beautiful, culturally diverse, and fit for celebration. And this is just, I love just looking through this and seeing the pictures and how it's all divided up. I'm excited to get into it. And I love the idea of bringing together a diverse cuisine and pulling it into like a collection into one piece. I think it's a really great idea. I've heard great things about this cookbook, and I think there's things that have a lot of different techniques and approaches, because again, it's celebrating that diversity of one cuisine and how, you know, there's lots of different pieces that come together and over a period of time as well. So this is going to be a great one to get into. The next book I have is the Flavor Bible. I had seen this recommended as a really great book for cooking and also recipe development and that kind of thing. It's the essential guide to culinary creativity based on the wisdom of America's most imaginative chefs by Karen Page and Andrew Dornenburg. And this is another one that, but even more so I think than salt, fat, acid, heat, it just goes through ingredients and tells you like what flavors go well with that thing. It's in alphabetical order, so let's just flip. Here we go. We've got kiwi down here. Okay, this is not working. Let me hold this up a little bit better. We've got kiwi down here at the bottom. And it just says, it tells you the season, what it tastes like, what kind of ways you might prepare it, and then it has other ingredients that go well with it. So bananas, berries, cherries, chocolate, coconut, ice cream, custard, grapefruit. So it's just a nice way, like if you're looking at an ingredient or something you have and you're like, what can I do with this? It gives you that kind of like quick reference. Or if you're creating a new recipe, it gives you that reference to figure out what kind of flavors might be good with this thing or what can I combine. So I think this is just going to be really helpful as a reference book. Again, not something that you're like cooking from, but I wanted to include it in this because I think, you know, a lot of cooking and home cooking is using great recipes that you love, but also especially as you become more skilled, and just for practical reasons, it's a lot about like knowing how to combine the things that you do have to pull something together that's going to taste good. So this I think is going to be a really helpful resource to have on hand. Next we have What's for Dessert by Claire Saffitz. And this is one that I've been really excited for ever since she announced that it was coming out. I have Claire's first book, which is called Dessert Person, and I love that book. Like everything I have made from it is delicious, or even better is like the best version of that thing. And I'm like, okay, I never need another recipe because this is it. Like you can't beat this. So I've been very happy with that book, and I love that one too because it has so many like techniques. It has a lot of pictures. It shows you what things should look like, and Claire is really good about giving clear indicators of what things should look like, modifications, all that kind of stuff. So I love how she writes recipes. I think it's great. This cookbook is a little bit simpler. It says simple recipes for dessert people. So I think one thing with the first book is a lot of people felt like it was too complex or too complicated, or they wanted, you know, maybe those recipes are fine, but they wanted some things too that were a little bit quicker and easier to pull together. So that's what this book is all about. And first off, the cover, just gorgeous, gorgeous. We can just flip through here. Like there's this whole section that I just landed on. Ooh. There we go. Easy cakes. And it's just all kinds of different easy cakes. And I think there's a lot more like less need for special equipment, which I think was a thing for the first one. A lot of people feel like, well, what if I don't have a stand mixer, for example? And I'm curious about ingredients because this was something that didn't really occur to me when I was looking through the first cookbook, but when I was looking at reviews of it, I saw a lot of people who said like, when I'm making desserts, the reason I like baking and doing that kind of thing is because it's something that I can just make with what I have on hand. All I need to do is like keep some flour and some baking powder or yeast or some sugar, some nuts or, you know, chocolate chips or something in my pantry, and I know like I can bake something. And with Claire's first book, there were a lot of sometimes specialty ingredients, but also sometimes just like things that maybe aren't things you just keep around all the time, like fresh fruits or things that you might have to go out and purchase. Which to me, like usually when I'm baking, it's planned out. I do it as a part of my meal planning, like, oh, do I want to bake something this week? What do I want to make? What would I need for that recipe? But I kind of understood that criticism too, that if you just want to be able to make something, you just want to be able to make it. Looking through here, it looks like there still are a lot of fruits and stuff. So maybe for people who have that feeling, it still might not be for them. I haven't cooked through it yet, but just looking at the recipe names, there's a lot of fruits. But I also know Claire talks a lot about how she loves using fruits in baking. And I mean, I love that too, because you can really cook with the seasons, use things that are really fresh, especially if you're doing gardening or if you go to your local farmer's market or things like that. You can really benefit from those kind of peak flavors. Through here, there's a lot of no-bake recipes, which I think are going to be really great for some people. So I'm hopeful that it'll be kind of like her first book where everything is just a banger, but it's also going to be stuff that maybe doesn't take quite as long or is a little easier or doesn't require a bunch of special equipment to make it happen. So those are all the new cookbooks I've added to my collection over the past few months. And like I'm sure I said when I talked about every single cookbook, I'm really excited to cook through these. Just the mixture of new and familiar and all the great things that new cookbooks get to bring us in our kitchens. I'm really looking forward to it. I'd love to hear in the comments if you have any cookbooks that you have recently added to your collection that you've really been loving. And I'll have a couple videos linked here for you that you might be interested, including a video of me unhauling a bunch of cookbooks that were in my collection that just were not doing it for me anymore. I hope that you are having a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.